My name is Rich Coleman. I am the host for the Prevention Corner, and we are so excited about being here with you again tonight. And we are, during the Black History Month 2013, doing a feature with our local African American female authors. We are so excited about being able to reach out, not only to find them, but to read their works and to see how important it is, not only as an African American author, but also content. We found some fantastic authors, and I'm so excited that tonight one of our authors we're going to be speaking with is right here from our Washtenaw County area and just doing tremendous work. This is Carla Wilson. Good evening. How are you today?
I am excellent. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. And, it's been great because a lot of the things that we've done in passing along the way and been able to share information online and a number of different things that have been going on, it's just great to be able to see the amazing content of the books and the work that you're doing. The book that we're going to talk about tonight, one of two books, What If I'm Right?, which is her most recent book that she's written. But I also like to make sure that we talk about the person. Share the wealth, sharing content about who you are as an individual. Because when we write, and for those of us who are in it, because as a songwriter, you pour your heart into content to give it back so that others can share and be a part of it. But tell us about you, because this is amazing work as we prepare to get into this. Tell us about Carla.
Well, Rich, thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to tell you about the book and who I am. And the book, What If I'm Right?, it's about my journey as a correction officer, working in the criminal justice system. And it's a celebration of me finding my inner voice, listening to my inner voice, and being led by it. And the best part is I've learned to teach others how to do the same. So the book is a celebration of the lessons, the insight, and the power that comes with being in a state of willingness.
And the challenges that we have as parents, as we work in the community, as we're going through this daily struggle of life, these are things that are just so important that you've reflected in your work. Because as you're dealing with someone who's there every day, and I know this from when I worked in juvenile corrections, we had a 24-hour captive audience because they had to be there. Mm-hmm. But it was the things that they did not have that I found when I was working with young people. I need to give you everything that I can while I'm here because I don't know what the next phase in your life is going to be. The successes that I have found, which is what I've reflected and seen in your writings. Mm-hmm. How did you get to where you are? And that challenge is when you're working with people who have, and they realize, I may be incarcerated forever. I may not have another option. And that willingness to go that extra mile to give some guidance and some resources about life changes. Because that's, when you look at the content of what you're doing, and when you look at your 22 plus years of service and all of those people that you've interacted with, there's a challenge that's there. Mm-hmm. Because those individuals, they will get to a point where they pour their soul out to you.
Definitely.
And it's like the reality of facing them right there in front of them. Talk to us about the experiences that bring you to, first as a writer, to pull that from what you do and see every day, and then being able to do groups and go out and do discussions and self-help initiatives. How important has that been for your groundedness?
Well, it has definitely been a humbling experience to be in a position working in the criminal justice system. As you said, it's a 24/7 job, and you touch life after life every day. And a lot of times those lives are in crisis. And it's not just about the people we supervise, it's about us. It's about self-care. I can't watch 50 or 60 people a day and not look at myself and not examine my own journey. And that was the catalyst to why I wrote the book. And when I'm talking to one person, I'm basically talking to 25 because as I'm talking to you, I've got 25 years listening. Mm-hmm. And as I have a conversation with you, and if I'm fortunate enough to help you feel better, all 25 are going to feel better. Yeah. They're going to feel stronger. They're going to feel more directed. But that was just the beginning, just being there in that atmosphere. After a while, like I said, that self-discovery, you've got to do something with that information. Mm-hmm. And there is a level of frustration as you look around.
Oh, yes, indeed.
You know, as any other environment that people work in. And then after a while, I'm like, I want to be a part of the solution here. What can I do to make a difference? Mm-hmm. And after a while, I figured out I have a responsibility here. You know, I feel obligated. I've got to do something to make a difference. I'm not just going to do 20 to 25 years and shut the door and say, oh, I did my thing. Yeah. So that's what led me to return to school.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the things that as I read through your writings and can see the content and how you were striving for those individuals that you had that captive audience with to look at themselves. Mm-hmm. Look deep within so that as you think about the changes that you need to make, don't just give it to me lip service because it's really yours. You have to walk this path. You talk about in your stories pennies. Mm. Pennies. And you brought this little jar of pennies that is so cool. Talk to us about pennies.
Okay. I love the penny stories, and I get a lot of feedback on the penny stories. Not only do I work in the criminal justice system, I also work in the recovering community. So I'm one of the few officers where I still have contact with a large number of the population after they've been released, after they've re-entered their lives, and they're just going in and out of their daily grind. And that's how the penny stories play out for me. When I first started this journey, I had started grad school, and it was after work, and I was on my way to the locker room to change. And before I got there, I was praying by my vehicle, and I was praying for clarity and certainty, and I was like, Lord, just as simple as I can remember it, if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm on the path that you want me to remain on, can you leave a penny by my truck when I come out of the locker room? And I went to the locker room, I changed clothes, and there was a penny by my truck. Wow. And that was in 2000. And so along my journey, pennies have shown up at significant times. I had news that my father was dying. He had had a blood clot in his brain the size of a grapefruit, and I had to drive 5 hours before he was taken off life support. And they took him down to hospice, and the next morning, my father woke up, and he was speaking, and everything had reversed. And on the nightstand, there was a penny. So these pennies, like I said, they show up at significant times. And when it comes to an inmate, I have a couple penny stories with inmates. It was less than 2 months ago, and a former inmate said, Miss Wilson, I saw you in my mind and in my spirit. She said, one day, I was going to turn myself into Psyche R. I was having that bad of a day. And she was walking toward U of M, and she said, and I found a penny. And I remembered your stories. And I picked that penny up, and I knew I would be okay. And I returned home. And she's been home ever since. So I always encourage people to share your stories, share your struggles, not with just the people you work with, but with your children, with your aunts, with your uncles, with everyone, because you never know who it's going to help.
And that's the most unique thing about your writings. And you have assignments.
Oh, I definitely do.
That people, you engage them, and since they're in that setting and beyond, they don't forget. You know, when you think about assignments about life and the things that you challenge them to do in their writings, talk to us about how that came about with the writing assignments.
Okay, well, first of all, let me say, ultimately, doing what you love is a gift, and to be able to get paid for doing what you love is even brighter. It's a wonderful thing. And when I went to school and I got the clinical explanations for behavior, and I added the spiritual concept to it, I also was doing life coaching, not just for inmates, but for family members, for professionals, some of them with PhDs, you know, preventing burnout and whatnot. And it's been my motto is once you recognize a problem, it's up to you to do something about it. And that's why I wanted to add something constructive at the end of the book, such as assignments, because I wanted the stories to motivate people to look within. Now, once you looked within and seen A, B, or C, here's what you can do about it when you're ready. This is more than just a book. It's a study guide. It can be a diary. It can be your roadmap. As long as it's something to get you thinking, something to get you unstuck. And I also included resources.
Yes.
Not only for people returning from jail or prison, but for families. There's a family network for people who think, could I have my charges expunged? It's not only in the book, it's on the website, things that I thought, you know, were important.
For the families.
Yes, things about the federal criminal justice system, what some of the statistics are. You know, information is key.
Yeah, and I think that's what I really took from what your writings and how you framed this process of what if I'm right. Because you didn't just look at the individual. You looked at if this individual gets out, what are they going back to? We have to help mold change for the individual, but as well as the environment in which they return. The family component, I applaud you for that, because that's so critical to make sure that the family knows and recognizing, particularly if it's a substance abuse problem, don't be an enabler.
Exactly.
You've got to help eliminate the vices that brought us here. And the family dynamic of understanding, here is what we need to do. Here is what you can do to help. Not only the individual, but yourself, because maybe you haven't got involved and arrested or incarcerated. You're doing the same things.
Exactly.
And a lot of times it's repetitive. People do things together. They enjoy things together. Sometimes people get, the ones who get caught, sometimes those who don't. But that enabler and having that awareness and resources in order to help the family. How important has that been in this 22 years of service for you?
When I think of recovery and addiction and self-care, we're talking about treating the whole person. And when we say the whole person, that includes the family. And what I've also included in the book is what your loved one may undergo when they go to treatment, when they go to jail, when they go to prison, some of the things that they may encounter, but what can you do to help yourself? I even put a list, because we can get so enmeshed in our loved ones' problems that we forget about ourselves, their self-care.
Yes.
And so I gave a list of things that a person can do while that loved one is incarcerated or in treatment. You know, just doing simple things like having quiet time, meditating, taking a bubble bath, going to the movies, removing yourself from a toxic situation is key. But how to keep yourself out of that turmoil is very instrumental in staying healthy. And when we talked about some of the problems that people face once they get out of jail, well, you know, people from the military face some of the same problems.
Yes, they do.
And I wanted to include that because I come from a military background. And when that person goes to war, just like someone who goes to jail or prison, the dynamics of that family shifts. And they have to learn how to get along without you. And sometimes it's easier to get along without you. And when people come home, now we have to restructure again because we've got to move you back in. And sometimes that's hard.
Yes.
Sometimes that's very difficult because they have no idea what that person encountered when they were at war, when they were at prison. So in that way, there's some parallel dynamics going on with both.
And one of the things, because I've done a lot with the VA hospital, and we're looking at these two theater of wars that we're dealing with that a lot of our young people are coming back home to. And our criminal justice system has really been challenged because assaults and domestic violence from post-traumatic stress syndrome. And I applaud that at a local level. There's a huge emphasis now, as they're doing nationwide, to reach out to their families and those who are dealing with situations instead of incarceration, to get them to the hospital and working with the VA hospital. But when you look at the big picture for those who are repeat offenders who come back into the system, that post-traumatic stress syndrome can be moved from that situation, from a military to a everyday life situation, particularly if substance abuse is driving what this behavior is that keeps bringing them back. There's a tremendous amount of stress there. That when you look at the formula, how do we break that cycle? And we are, our nationwide emphasis, because I'm dealing with this substance abuse issue all the time, with dealing with designer drugs and talking with young people about those challenges. But you see it on the other hand when they're coming down because they can't get it.
Exactly.
They cannot get it. Well, they're not supposed to. We'll put it like that. Our goal is to make sure that they don't. But then you see once that is done, that's gone, then you see the real person underneath that, because they've had time to get medical treatment and to come down and then see what life's really all about, and making some of those challenges. The types of things that we're seeing, particularly when we look at prisoners and we look at substance abuse, we look at criminal type of behaviors and conduct, are we stereotyping and putting people in boxes just because they were in the system? It's like, not going to trust you, never going to give you a chance. Do we do that as society? I know we do it, but do we do it too often with people who just need another chance?
We definitely do, and that's a discussion that I am fortunate to have with people who are locked up, and they know how they are perceived, and it's very unfortunate. And they give me so much feedback. They say, well, they think we all drink, they think we're all prostitutes, they think we're all bad people, but I'm talking to somebody's mother, somebody's aunt, somebody's sister. And I also know that sometimes it takes people coming to jail or prison to get diagnosed properly, when it was a mental illness all along. And people are displaced. And when you start closing state hospitals, and these people fall in the gaps, and if our correction officers are not educated, you're going to misread those signals. That person's not combative. They just didn't get their medication. And it's very unfortunate, because these are valuable people of our community. And they know that they're being stereotyped. They know how they're being perceived. And they want to get better. They want to do better. And if we don't have the skills and we don't have the tools, nobody wins.
So when we go through the process and the time, some based on the kinds of activities that they are charged with and then have to be maintained in the correctional facilities, we talk about whatever that time frame may be, the reality sits in after the first 48, 72 hours. I'm going to have to be here for a while. And do you find at times when people go through that, they hit that rock bottom, you hear the cries, you hear the tears, you hear that anguish of, oh my God, I can't believe I did this to myself, to my family, look at what I've done. And people they empty themselves out of self-pity because of what they've done. And then at what point do you see people begin to come to grips with, I need to make a change?
For every person, it's different. And one of the reasons that people use again is guilt, shame, and not having someone or something positive to connect to. And that's where education pays off as officers, and knowing something about recovery, because we can start that healing process even sooner. You know, right there in that moment, you know, when someone's vulnerable. And there's many times when someone can get their hands on that drug, they're not listening. But when they can't get it and they're miserable, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? And or when somebody's DTing or puking and just in a horrible space, and then they're like, I'll do anything.
Yeah.
And it's like, now I can work with you.
Yeah.
And I can remember being at a support group and having, this woman in tears. And I said to her, when you're ready to do the work, give me a call.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many people stay stuck in that misery. And they get comfortable in it, and they don't take that next step.
Yeah.
Or I don't get that call.
Absolutely. So when you say DT and VT being detoxing, and when we, particularly right now, when we see the substance abuse at the levels that we're seeing, not just here in our area, this is nationwide.
Yes, it is.
With legal as well as illegal substances that people are immersing themselves in, particularly prescription drugs. And the challenges, again, when we talk about the process of when you leave here, you're not going into a situation where you're enabled to start right back where you left off. And that challenge to make that change and all of those things that have to go along with the process. Do you see that we are not doing enough in our community? I know that our healthcare system is so challenged, particularly for mental health services. We're seeing it in so many ways, tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, with someone who did not get mental health services. We know that our correctional sites now have become mental health services.
Yes, they have.
And that's unfortunate, because that's not what the design is there for.
Exactly. And some of the changes that I've noticed is when it comes to the educational system, now they're starting at many levels, especially higher education, they're starting to incorporate social services, mental health, with training of police officers.
Yes.
And that, to me, is excellent. It's about time.
Yeah.
Because, there's many of us that are frustrated by what we see. And when you don't know how to help and don't know what to say, you feel powerless.
Sure.
And there's nothing worse than feeling powerless, especially in a in a field that you've committed 25 years of your life to.
Yes.
And I can say the fact that I decided to go back to school, it takes the frustration right out of my job. Because, one, with our recidivism rate being so high, chances are, if I talked to you 6 years ago, and you come to jail, let's say in the next 2 weeks, I will probably see you. And you will probably, when you see me, you see hope. When you see my face, you see relief. You see an answer. And I have given some books out to the jail, and what's interesting is many people are stealing the book. Many people are ripping pages out. And I lost my ex-husband, or I lost the marriage because of drugs. He was addicted. But he's somebody who's, in the world of recovery, and now we can have a dialogue, and I learn a lot through him. And he said, you need to find out what pages they're tearing out, because they're tearing out hope. They're seeing hope in your book, and you need to see what pages they're tearing out to give you some insight.
Yeah. That's a good point, because if they're focusing on that, I got to remember this, and I don't have pencil, pad, or paper.
I got it with me.
There it goes. And that's got to be a good feeling. That's got to be a good feeling. But you know that it's only a part of the process.
It's a beginning. It's a
part
start.
of the process. And your training, you've gone through the chemical dependency training and a lot of different avenues to not only help for what you do in your job, but then outside when you work with other entities. Talk with us about how you can get access to groups that you're involved with and those types of things that you're experiencing beyond your everyday job.
Okay. I visit many support groups, and in those support groups there's always different people who have different needs. In one of my groups, there was a professor from Wayne State and a professor from Michigan. And the one from Wayne State invited me to talk to her class of educators. Educators who had to get the master's degree to carry on with their with their education with the younger people of Detroit. Now that's a challenge. So my goal was to motivate them, to validate them, to applaud them, to meet them where they're at. And, for every group, I go to meet a need. And basically, I listen to what they have to say. I let them tell me who they are, what they're looking at. And then I go in. And that's where my education paid off. because with my education, for me, it wasn't just an academic experience.
Yeah.
It was a spiritual experience.
Yes, yes.
And what had happened with me when I was going through grad school is I had taught meditation so much and taught people to hear their inner voice that mine was getting louder and louder. And what happened was I was able to see the tests before I took them. So I would know what was on the test before I saw it. So that's how I was able to get straight A's. So 4 years later, with a near perfect score, all A's and 1 B+, the last test, it was 3.5 hours long. I did it in 25 minutes. So I'm sitting there on graduation day and go, how do I bottle up and sell this?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't about the academics. It was being able to feel, being able to hear the need and go in. And that's what I do. And that has been a dream of mine. It's almost like when somebody watches a show like American Idol and you want to hear somebody with that perfect pitch, that perfect sound. And that motivates me when you're right on the mark, when you have that anointing, where you can go in. I would much rather be able to analyze somebody in 12 minutes or less and say, this is basically what I feel, where I feel you need to go. If you really want my help and need my help, let's do this in 20 minutes or less.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather not sit here for 6 months every Tuesday for an hour. That's just not me. Now, some people go right ahead,
Right.
but that's not me.
Yeah.
I'd rather sit down and talk and look and feel and say, here we go.
Yeah.
If you want to take some notes, let's do it. If not, you know, I can find something else to do.
Yeah. And some people need that kind of structure instead of,
Definitely.
I'm not going to coddle you along this process. You need to grab a hold of this thing, think about it, and run with it. You need to get up. You coach not only with being a coach, but then you take these coaching skills as a receiver so that you can move forward.
Exactly.
And I think that's what's so great about how you described in the book. You know, when you think about the phrase, what if I'm right? What if I'm right? And asking that question, because everything that we do, all of the interactions, when we got them to the bottom and we made a mistake, to get to that level of where you don't have that freedom anymore. You know, you have to do things when we tell you. And you've got to go to court when you've been told. You don't have that option anymore. And people have a tough time until they come to grips with the realities. I have to make this change.
Definitely.
I got to make this change. When you think about the coaching skills and the training that you've had, because I see it reflected with the tips that you provide throughout the whole book, how important has it been when you've seen someone who has gone through, they've made the baby steps to start making change, they hit the wall and they make complete 360 go all the way back? How do you help get them back on track?
I myself, I like the guided meditation, and I like helping someone come up with what they want. What do you see? Where do you want to go from here? And that's empowerment, because I say, I want you to create the picture. Tell me what success looks like for you. Put me there. Show me. Guide me. Let's go. Close your eyes. What do you see? What do you feel? And for those who can't see, then I help them. And I'm like, just relax, close your eyes, listen to my voice, and let me guide you. And by doing the guide, and there's so many different types of meditation, the receptive, the program meditation. And what I do is I use everything all at once. And I've had someone say, you know, I was in this terrible car accident, and I was in a coma, and I was in a nursing home, and I heard your voice. And I used to think this particular person was never paying attention. But he said, I heard your voice, and that's what brought me back. And reminding people, not only get a vision, but once you get a vision, take action. Take action. That's step number 2. But it all starts with a desire. Create that picture. And I learned that, and I was invested in that because I was watching Oprah one day, and Chris Gardner from The Pursuit of Happiness was talking about some of his trials, and I could hear the pain in his voice, and I was drawn to his pain because I've always been fascinated by broken people, just fascinated, because I wanted to know if I had the skill to get them standing up. And what I did is I was just drawn in, and I visualized myself meeting him and talking to him. And a year later, I did meet him. And in my mind, I saw us taking a picture together, and I saw that my camera broke. I said, well, when I meet him, I'm taking 2 cameras. So when I met him and we took our picture, my camera broke. Yeah. I said, that's all right, I got 2. So we took a picture. So I said to him, so Chris, I go, I work in a jail with 60 men. I go, what do you want me to tell them you said? Yeah. And he said, tell them to get a vision and hold on to it no matter what. No matter what, get a vision. Create that vision and move toward it. And that's something that I've always believed in.
So you had a vision not only with this book, but also another book. Talk to us about how you got there and the challenges as an African-American female author. It's a huge world out there with the nooks and the books, and everybody's on e-readers and all of these things. And it's like there's so many self-help books out there. If I write something, will it matter? Talk to us about some of those obstacles that inside you were feeling, but you knew you had to do this. You had to put this down and write.
Okay, I'm just like anybody else. I believe everybody has a story to tell, and I always encourage people, write it down so people behind you will have something, they'll know your story. And I used to think maybe one day somebody will come through and validate me. And then I thought, well, when's that day coming? You know, I think I better start validating myself. And what happened with Tom Lagana, he is the author of Chicken Soup of the Prisoner's Soul. And he wrote several other books. Well, he was writing another book, and he called one of my supervisors and said, does any of your authors or officers have a story that might that they could contribute to my next book? He said, well, let me call around. And somehow people knew that I like to write. And he said, hey, do you got a couple stories? I'm like, well, I can write a couple. And so that was a Friday night. I sent him on Sunday. I got a call on Monday, and he was here in Ann Arbor that following Friday. And for me, I'm a storyteller and I'm a talker. And I can write a story as quick as I can type it. Yeah. I don't do any rough drafts. I just write from the heart. And then I have somebody edit it for grammatical errors. So I said, if I can do 2 stories, let me see how many I can do. So I'd write a story, and before I knew it, I had 30 stories. Wow. 30 stories. And I wrote it in two weeks. 30 stories. It took me about 20 minutes to write a story. Yeah. Because it's right here in the heart.
Yep. Yeah. And that's Chicken Soup for the Prisoner's Soul.
And his follow-up book was called Serving Productive Time. So you find 2 of my stories in that book. Plus, he invited me to help edit the book. So I actually got a chance to help pick the stories that would go in that book.
So you've worked with a number of other authors to not only do workshops and presentations, but also to collaborate.
Yes.
That experience alone is so enriching because it gives you a different perspective of people you've worked with. And I know that from being a musician. When you collaborate, when you're writing original music and people start coming in with new ideas to add on to what you're doing and looking at or hearing it a different way, all of those are so important with the end product.
Definitely. It's when you meet people that are for the same thing, for the enrichment and the empowerment and the enlightenment of others, you're already speaking the same language. So when I met Tom, he put my information on his blog, and someone from Chicken Soup of the African American Soul saw my information and emailed me and just said, hey, believe it or not, I was in prison and I got out. Somebody empowered me, and now I'm a motivational speaker and a writer, and I just want to encourage you to keep empowering inmates because somebody empowered me. So his name is Dennis Mitchell, and what happened is he was convicted of a crime, was sentenced to 35 years. And while that went on, his child was killed by a drunk driver, and he made a prayer to God, and he said, if I ever get out, especially if I get out early, Lord, I will spend my life educating children about not driving while drunk and laws and just not drinking. So he did 7 years. He got out. He winded up having a television show in Spokane, Washington for 7 years, and now he's dedicated his life to empowering youth.
How about that?
And the founder of all the chicken soups, Mark Hansen, while he was in prison, winded up communicating with him and sending him tapes. And other people did. And so this man changed because somebody reached out to him. And he reached out to me and said, keep doing what you're doing. And I think what you're doing does make a difference. So, we started having a dialogue, and now he's one of my mentors, and that's Dennis Mitchell. And he's in Chicken Soup of the African American Soul.
Yeah. Well, as we get ready to wrap up, you are available for speaking engagements as well?
Yes, I am. I love to speak, and I love to be invited anywhere to speak. I'm more of a storyteller.
Yeah.
These are just a few of my stories, but I love the children and educators and helping professionals, because we need to be reminded of why we are in the positions that we're in.
Yes.
And we need to make the most of it. And self-care is huge. And when we don't take care of ourselves, many people suffer, not just our family members, but the people that we are in charge of. And sometimes it's just a reminder of who we are is what is needed. And I can remember being in grad school and looking at something, I think it was statistics, something that was challenging, and everybody's just shaking with their papers, and I just got it up, I just got out of my seat, and I started strutting across the classroom floor, and they're like, what are you doing? I said, I'm just reminding myself how I'm going to walk on graduation day. I just got to do something with this energy. And they're like, well, all right then, all right. Yeah. So, and sometimes it just takes somebody to give you permission that you're on the right path. Keep doing what you're doing. Be who you are. Be heard. And just do your best. Do your best.
Carla, it has been an absolute pleasure and a treat to be here with you tonight to talk about the book, What If I'm Right? A book that celebrates spiritual intuition. We're going to put the information up on the screen, her website, contact information if you'd like to have her come speak to your group. Please feel free, hit me up on preventioncorner@writeme.com. Let us know what you think. I love having guests on such as Carla and all of the things that we're seeing, particularly during African American and African American History Month, and this importance. Don't be fooled that you can't make a change by writing and being a part of this world as an author. We see the example. It has been an absolute treat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for writing such a great book. My name is Rich Coleman. We're closing out the program tonight. You can reach me here again at preventioncorner@writeme.com. And feel free to let us know what you think of the programs. But we're going to put, the information up how to reach Carla and all of the great information that she offers with her workshops and information that she come up and talk to all of the groups that might be available. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time here at the Prevention Corner. Be well.